morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining. I think you will find today's session interesting. So just a quick overview again. My name is Cecilia Denton, and I'm an industrial psychologist. I'm the owner of PTES Consulting. So we are a psychometric assessment firm, and we provide HR support together with HR Talk. And today what we're going to talk about is employee engagement. All right, so I have to say that I changed the introduction for today just a little bit because I wanted to share something very interesting with you. So I'm gonna change the structure slightly. So we're going to start off by talking about the definition of employee engagement, and then I want to share a case study with you that we did in South Africa that you will find very, very interesting. It's an incredibly practical, good example about employee engagement. Then I'm going to share with you the first result, and then I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into what is or how do we measure engagement levels, and then secondly, what are the drivers of engagement? So there's two things that you need to look at when you look at employee engagement. All right, and then we're going to look at the end result. So there was a first result, and we made some changes, and then I'm going to discuss with you the end result. Then I want to talk to you about the general benchmark for employee engagement internationally as well as nationally. This is information that you really need to know because it's applicable to you too. So then we're going to talk about research on employee engagement, general research on employee engagement, and then should you want to do any employee engagement projects or surveys, what should you look for and what you should avoid. All right. So let's look at the definition of employee engagement. So employee engagement is a workplace approach resulting in the right conditions for all members of an organization to give their best each day, committed to their organizational goals, values, and motivated to contribute to organizational success with an enhanced sense of own well-being. So there is a lot of well-being or coming from the person themselves as well. So it's not just what you create, but you create something in the employee themselves as well. So Jack Welch, the ex-chairman of General Electric, said that if you're running a business, whether it's a corner store or a multi-product multinational, we would say there is three indicators that really works. And the first is employee engagement, then customer satisfaction, and then cash flow. So employee engagement is one of the top things that you really need to consider and know more about. So I want to share with you this case study that we did a while back with an organization in South Africa, and we've got permission to share their details. So this was one of our clients, African Tikkun, and this is a non-profit organization that's founded in 1994. So the goal of Africa Tikkun is to develop and uplift young people in underprivileged communities in South Africa. So they work to end child poverty and youth unemployment in South Africa by implementing their cradle to career 360-degree model. So this is really an organization that's out there because of the love and the passion for it. So it's not a money-driven organization. And then following a retrenchment process and a comprehensive internal evaluation in 2013, the management team realized that it was necessary to not only restructure their operations and to clarify reporting lines and deliverables, but also to address their organizational culture. So with particular emphasis on creating an environment where employees can freely contribute. So they also, because they were receiving donors and sponsorships, they had to actually provide a showcase for the effectiveness and sustainability of their programs and interventions. So they had to report back on whether they're doing well or not. So the company was struggling with a few things. There was more communication issues that was happening, problems that was happening there. But what we did, we conducted an employee engagement survey with approximately 400 individuals from the organization using a scientifically reliable instrument. So I want to share with you the first round of results. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen here, so this is not the result that we got from them. I just want to show you the indicators of engagement. So there's four indicators. So the first one in the red is the person is disengaged. The second one is they're not engaged, they're just there. They're not engaged. They're just there. Semi-engaged is over here, and then fully engaged is over here. So one would expect everyone in all companies to be fully engaged. And I'm going to share with you later on the benchmark information about most people's engagement, and you will be fairly shocked, I think, if you don't know a lot about the statistics on this. I think you may be surprised. All right, so this was the first set of results that we got from Africa Ticon. So this was in 2013, and this is what it looked like. Now, obviously, they spoke to us originally because they had problems. They knew they were having problems. They were not getting the results that they wanted. They didn't know where the problem was, but they were experiencing various symptoms. So firstly, right at the bottom, 4% disengaged employees. So unhappy, dissatisfied. But this part over here, these people can become sabotagers. So they're not necessarily bad when they get there before they enter into this way of feeling, but they may become sabotaging people in this culture, likely looking for another job. So luckily a very small percentage, but you don't want any percentage over here. And then quite a large portion of not engaged employees. So that's almost 70%. So these people are experiencing low levels of energy, do the minimum to get by, they resist change, they don't add much value. These people are just there. So someone who's not engaged, they're just there. They just go to work and they're just there. People that were very engaged is about 27%, so at least almost 30%. But in comparison to the 70, that's not what we want. So an engaged employee is a committed and loyal employee who add value to the organization. Now, you must remember, these people are here because of the passion and the love for the job. This is not for climbing the corporate ladder and making lots of money. They're here for passion and love. So we needed to know what was going on here. Why are these people feeling like this and experiencing this? So I want to show you the first thing that we look at when we measure engagement. So we're going to look at this block on the right-hand side. So there's two continents that I want you to become aware of. So firstly, here we look at the commitment of people, and secondly, the willingness. And then over here, we plot you on whether you are disengaged. You see the slight pink over here. Then not engaged, semi-engaged, and then fully engaged. So, but you can see that we plot you on the continents of commitment level and willingness level. So firstly, what commitment means is the employee's commitment to the organization, its leadership and their jobs. For example, would you recommend your organization to your friends as a great place to work? So that's the commitment. And then secondly, the willingness that we find at the bottom here. So their willingness to do more than what is required to help the organization meet its objectives. So in your view, how much effort do employees in your organization put into their work? So remember, that is that extra, that energy, that I want to do it because I love it. So the first one is commitment. Do I want to be here? I'm committed to my job, versus the willingness to do more than what is required. Just that little bit of extra energy that you would have done if it was your own place. So these are the engagement levels and how we measure it. So now I want to show you how are we going to get to the engaged level to plot them over here. All right, so I'm going to linger a little bit longer on the drivers of engagement, because the drivers of engagement are the facets that is incredibly important to any employee. And I want you to know that we did not just thumbsuck these topics. These ones are very well researched, and the research comes from organizations where this was conducted in order for us to identify exactly what are the things that people want and what it is that they need. Remember that whenever a need of a person is not fulfilled, if a need is not fulfilled, a person will leave. So doesn't matter how you look at it, a need is a need. So I want to start at the top here. So we've got nine drivers that is really applicable to most organizations. So the first one is strategic alignment. Let me run through all of them quickly. So strategic alignment, and I'm going to tell you what that is just now. So there's strategic alignment. There's secondly, manager intent. Thirdly, employee voice. Fourthly, feedback. Fifth, personal development. Number 6 here, recognition and praise. 7 is organization and environment. 7, 8, team relations, and 9, talent fit. All right, so let's start with strategic alignment. What does that mean? So this is the understanding, alignment, and contribution towards the organization's vision, strategy, and goals. To what extent does the work you do help the organization achieve its goals? This sounds so simple, but in most organizations where we do an employee engagement survey, people want to know, what is the bigger picture? How did whatever I did contribute to the bigger goal? But how far are we in achieving those goals? Did we make it? Did we not? Did we sort of make it? So people want individual feedback, but also they want bigger picture feedback. How did the organization do? Because whatever they do over here is going to add to the bigger picture. So strategic alignment, the communication between what am I doing and how is it linking to the bigger picture. Believe it or not, people actually want to know the bigger picture. They want to know what's going on. If you keep them in the loop, they will actually care about it. The second one, manager intent. So this is the perception of management practices and intent. So for example, does your manager treat everyone fairly and consistently? So this is the management style. This is the consistent application of maybe policies and procedures, the same treatment consistently to fairly with respect to everyone. So that's just the fairness that comes in. So does everyone get treated in the same way? Is the leave policy applicable to everyone in the same way? So as soon as your policies and procedures are very standardized, it's in place, whatever, do we keep to it and stick to it? There's nothing that makes people unhappy. I know it sounds so simple, but if people can see that they are not being treated the same way, they start feeling that the resentment. So managers needs to do the same thing across the board. And before I actually continue, I wanted to start off by telling you that there's 2 parts to employee engagement. It's not just about the employee. A lot of people tell me, they have to keep the employee happy. It's all about employee satisfaction. It's got a direct impact on you as the organization as well. This is not just for the employee. It's got a direct impact on your profitability and your productivity. So it goes both ways. It's going to help you as the owner, the boss, the management of the organization, and it's going to keep your people happy. Don't think we're just focusing on the one part. Everyone will benefit from this. I'm going to show you some stats on the profitability numbers a little bit later on. So just hang around for that because it's enormous. You need to know this. So firstly, strategic alignment, then manager intent. How are we being treated? Then thirdly, let's look at employee voice. So this is empowered employees with opinions that count in responsive work environment. So do your ideas and opinions count at work? So this is people just want to be heard. I've heard so many times where the people on the ground floor, they say that they know what it is that's going wrong and what we're not doing in the right way right from the start, but they don't feel like they can say something to intervene at the top of the process. So I've heard so many people that they start keeping quiet. Even if they say something, no one listens. So open up that loop of communication, open it up, because if the guy on the ground floor can see you doing something wrong over here, you're just going to save everyone time and money and effort. Just open up the lines of communication. So employee voice, people do actually want to be heard. They want to be heard. Then we look at feedback. So this is two-way communication with regards to individual and group performance. So how often does your manager give you feedback on how well you are doing? So remember strategic intent at the top here. People want to know how that company is doing. They also at the bottom here want to know, how am I doing? There must be some sort of feedback. Usually, when everything goes well, everyone just keeps quiet and it's sort of, of course it's going well, there's no problem. So we just flow but people do want to get some form of a feedback or a, so this is different from the recognition one that we're going to get to, but this feedback, even if it's just if you have something like that frequently, consistently, it doesn't have to be constantly, at least maybe every 3 months, or there's people that do it every almost every 6 weeks, but it really depends on your organization, maybe even twice a year. It doesn't have to be every single day, but you want to have that feedback, two-way communication where the individual can say what it is that's working for me, what it is that we don't have in place to do it, but people do want to have some form of feedback. Then personal development. So personal development, this is the opportunity for employees to grow, develop personally, and learn new skills. So do you feel that you develop and learn new skills in your current job? Often there's not a lot of room for growth, but communication, so this will be very much hand in hand with the feedback. Just to have that communication with your employees about how they are doing, what it is they can do to upskill themselves, even in their personal capacity. A typical PDP, like a personal development plan here, will be very nice. So even if the growth is limited, people can still grow in their personal capacity and learn how to maybe soften their emotional intelligence style or their softer skills, or even technical skills like computer skills or whatever. So there's always little things that you can do, even if it doesn't mean that the person is growing massively along the ranks of the organization. If you don't have a lot of room for growth, if you have a lot of room for growth, it's even better. This is where your succession planning will come in. The typical skills audits that we've discussed before, where you can see who is where, what can you do with whom. Do you move people laterally? Do you move them upwards? You've got a whole room that you can even play with. It does not mean that you promise everyone promotion and you don't know what to do with them and where to put them and how to develop them. You can work with them just within the scope that they are in and making them better there where they are, but they also take responsibility for themselves over there. This is not just you as the boss, the owner, your problem. The employee takes responsibility for their own personal development by doing little things, maybe attending workshops, reading a book. You don't have, this doesn't necessarily have to be about money always. It can be a formal qualification process, or it can be small little things, even coaching or mentoring with someone else in the organization. I think most of you will know what it is what I mean when we're talking about the personal development. Just the fact that there's something in place will make people happy. Hand in hand with just the feedback about how am I doing. Then let's look at recognition and praise. So recognition and praise is about employees who feel appreciated and valued for their efforts and contributions. So do you feel appreciated for the work that you do? A lot of us will think that money is the bottom line. For some people it is. Some people are ambitious like that, and your personal value is your personal value, whether that is personal recognition, praise, whether it's a financial thing, whatever it is, it's up to you what it is that you want. So under this, you will have the financial component, but you know that research shows that money is not everything. People want to know that they've been valued for their contribution. Can you see how this once again links in very nicely with the strategic alignment? Is the organization reaching its goals? And then at the bottom here, did I do what it is that you wanted me to do? Are you happy with what it is that I'm doing? So that recognition and praise, you just want to feel appreciated for what it is that you do. This also links to the manager's intent. If you have a manager that is inclusive, that gives feedback, that does not mean that you constantly have to throw money at employees. That's not what that is about. So the recognition, you can even read up on it more and see what it is that you can incorporate in your organization, and it will be different for different organizations, from small to large, medium. It will be different for everyone. And then organization environment. So conducive working environment with respect to policies, procedures, safety, equipment. So do you have all the tools and equipment that you need to do your job well? So this sort of links to the the manager intent that I mentioned earlier, where we looked at policies and procedures and how it's being applied in the workplace. Here you've got everything that is the policies and procedures in place. So it should be in place before people can implement it. So people want to know whether the policies and procedures, is it fair? Is it consistently applied? Is it even there? And if it's there, do they know what it is? But this was one of the things that we changed at Africa Tikkun, is the way that there was communicated to everyone. I think the biggest things that was changed at Africa Tikkun was the communication. We changed the communication about most of these topics. The communication changed everything. So people were also talking about their environments. Do they have the equipment? Do they feel safe? Do they have the equipment to actually execute their jobs? One of the biggest things that was changed is just the way that there was communicated and things were consistently applied. We literally just took everything as it was, gave it some structure and filtered it down, and it made a massive difference. One of the second biggest things that we changed was the feedback about how the organization was doing and feedback on the individuals. But constantly, we made constant communication about everything, everywhere. And it started with the managers, how the managers changed their communication and communicated everything down, opened up the communication channels, opened up feedback about what it is that people thought that they could do better, how they can enhance things, how they can apply their own initiative, made the world of difference. So this organization environment is how we are working, and is it working? And the people on the ground will know. They're the ones doing it. So listen to them. They are the ones that can tell you this is working and that is not working. Then let's look at team relations. So a level of team cohesion, effectiveness and efficiency with regards to organizational tasks. So, for example, do you trust your team members? So that is the way that people are working together. As soon as there are problems in companies with regards to mistrust, the way that they're being managed, policies and procedures that's not in place, people immediately start working in isolation. They start sort of just hanging on, just doing what it is that they're supposed to do, and they start functioning in isolation. Now you've got a team, and within the team, you've got isolated thinking, you've got isolated effort. They're not linking anymore. They're not going through that extra effort, the willingness to go the extra mile. They start stopping that because I get into trouble. I try and apply my initiative or my ideas. It gets shot down. I get into trouble. So I just keep quiet and I work in isolation. Once that happens, you can't be like a well-oiled machine that moves forward, because everyone then does their own thing because they're just hanging on. Most people just hang on, not even for the money, maybe just hanging on to see what happens. So that team cohesion is incredibly, incredibly important, because every single person is like a link that links into each other, that gets you your end result. You won't get your end result when that happens. Okay, then the last one, talent fit. Employees in roles where they can utilize and grow their personal strength. So, for example, at work, how often do you get the opportunity to use your strengths? So the specific survey that we use is strengths-based. It looks at your strengths. It does not just look at your problems and the development areas. It looks at what is working. When you look at what's working, you want to copy that everywhere. It's easy because in your culture, you will have a specific thing that's working. You can't just make someone else's strengths applicable to every single organization, because a bank differs from an hotel industry, differs from construction. So everyone differs. Everyone's got a very unique type of industry or culture. So you want to look at what is your culture, what's working, and duplicate that. You don't want to take the banking sector's culture and fit it into your culture if it's not a fit at all. So you want to look at the people's personal strengths. Everyone has got some form of strength that they can add, but how do you know what it is? Do you even know what it is? You need to know what you have in order to capitalize on it and use it. This goes hand in hand with employee voice. allow for that feedback, allow for people to tell you what can we do better. I'm good at this. Let me add value there, or just allow me to say something. Sometimes people just like it if they can put something on the table. If it's not being used, it's the idea that's maybe not suited for right now, but people want to know that they at least listen to, that there's a brainstorming about what it is that we can do better. So personal strength, people have personal strengths. You need to know what it is, and you need to allow them to put it on the table. So these are the drivers of aspects in the work environment that has a direct impact on the levels of engagement in the organization. These things are real and they're true. So I hope that I've showed you something here new that you didn't know, but I think most people are fairly aware of most of these things. So, but I would base my work, if I was you, I would base my work on these constructs, because these ones are really well researched and it's true. All right, so let me show you the end result. This was incredibly exciting. So Africa Ticken increased their employee engagement with 32% over a 12-month period. So for 1 year, we made some changes. And the changes that was incorporated was the changes mostly about communication. So there was no bad people or bad managers or people with bad intent or deviant behaviors or selfishness. There was nothing like that. It was all about what does the organization want and do, and how do we equip our managers to filter that down. Once we opened the communication channels and just started talking more, everything opened up. So let's look at the stats for 2013 versus 2014. So remember, you have to be realistic. You're always going to still have people that are not as engaged, or people that's maybe very disengaged. I mean, statistically, you can't have a perfect world. Also, remember, this was only after 12 months. The engagement might have increased even more. We don't know at this point. But in 2013, the engaged employees was only on 27%. It increased to almost 60%. So it went more than double. And then non-engaged employees went from almost 70% to about 36%. And disengaged employees went from 4% to 5%. So it is interesting. There was a little bit more of an increase over there, but 1%, it's incredibly low. What is significant is the 60% up here. That is quite significant. This will only happen if you actually implement the things that you can see that is wrong. If you don't implement it, forget about it. It's not going to happen by itself. You have to actively work on what it is that you want to change, and you have to have milestones of when, what must happen, and how it must change, and have progress monitors in place. If you don't do that, you can forget about it. Then it was a measurement, and you're just leaving your results right there. That is probably the number one mistake most companies do. They get the results and then they don't do anything about it. So I want to show you the research that we've done. So more importantly, our data revealed that a 32% increase in employee engagement results in 246% increase in profits. This is the financial stats that I wanted to share with you, that I thought that you really, really needed to know. This is not just about the employee and upping the employee engagement. This is going to speak directly back to you as the owner and the senior management of an organization. That is more than triple the increase in profits. So this is a classic example of how you better your business by managing your human resources optimally. Remember that the red part here, these disengaged employees, they are not just disengaged, they are sabotagers. Sabotage, I don't know if that's a word, sabotage, they're the saboteurs. They create more problem than the guys that are just not engaged. The not engaged guys just don't talk to anyone, they just put their heads down, do what is required, nothing more. There's no additional effort. But the red part, they could be sabotaging. They may be spreading the negativity. This you don't want, the red part. So I just think that the increase in profits, really, this is something that you need to know, because even if you just increase your employee engagement by 15%, you're gonna double your profits. So this is really things that you need to be aware of. If you are an owner of an organization, if there is an organization, employee engagement is in it already. You cannot fight it or say that it's not important or don't want to talk about it. It's immediately there. As soon as you have people in your employee engagement is immediately there. It is just part of the human resource. It's there. You cannot fight it or deny it. So Leonie van Tonder, the Chief Operating Officer from Africa Tikkun, said that the Flow of Work survey gave us opportunity to address challenges that we would otherwise not have been able to do. So this is just the survey that we use that she's referring to, but the end result that she's talking about is it addressed the challenges that they were not even sure about what it was. They were not sure where the problems lie. They could see the symptom, like that people are not communicating, there's no team cohesion. They could see that, but they didn't know what was causing it. The answer was incredibly simple. The answer lies in communication, but now communication about what? And this is what we went back to. What do you need to talk to your employees about? What is it that they want to hear? And what is it that they want to share? So you need to know what it is that you're talking about before you can engage them. So don't just shoot in the dark. You're going to shoot and do not know where you're going to get it. So I just want to share this benchmark with you. This is the important information that I told you earlier on that you really need to know. So I may shock some people. Some people may know this. Some people may not. But this stats that you're seeing in front of you now, this is general stats for most organizations internationally and nationally. So we've done our homework very, very well. It might have changed a little bit now, percentage-wise, maybe a little bit. It's with the current state that we're in because of COVID, it may be up or down. I cannot even tell you at this point. You would have to do a whole new set of stats in order to know what it looks like right now this year, but this is a general indication of what it looks like in companies. So don't have a fright. Usually when we do a survey in a company, it looks like this, and then everyone is absolutely devastated. But I almost want to tell you it's normal. It's not good, but it's very normal, these stats. What you want to do is work on this. You can actually develop this. And you're welcome to put your questions on the screen here. I'm going to address it afterwards. So please add as many questions as you like as we go along. I will address it at the end. Okay, so the survey that we did shows that an average of only 3.5 out of 10 employees are fully engaged. So that's really not a great percentage. So 7% are disengaged. For the most part are disengaged. That's your saboteurs. So this is dissatisfied employees with a destructive influence and who are most likely looking for another job. Then you've got about roughly 18% that's not engaged. We call these people just passengers. They just there. They don't do anything. They're just there. So they're indifferent. They're frustrated employees with low levels of energy who do only the minimum to get by. Then you've got about 38% round about there that's semi-engaged. We describe them as the key contributors. So these are reliable employees who do what is expected of them, but who are inclined to be complacent and risk averse. So they do as much as they can. So they're not bad, but they lack that willingness to go the extra mile. So they've already stepped back a little and said, you know what, I get into trouble if I speak up or if I do this or that. I do see things that's maybe a little bit inconsistent. People don't listen to me when I speak up about something. So they've stepped back a little bit already. They were probably engaged at some point. So you can really still work with this. And then 30% are fully engaged. So these are your star performers. So highly committed and loyal employees who add value to the organization, who are prepared to go the extra mile. Now, if you've got something wrong in your organizational culture, say, for example, something simple like policies and procedures are not consistently applied, and there's like unfairness around it, but it's purely because it wasn't communicated well, it wasn't set in stone well, it wasn't, everyone didn't get maybe training on it, like a simple thing. It's not a deviant thing that was done with a bad intention. It sort of just happened like that. These fully engaged people may also then start becoming semi-engaged. It can grow to not engaged. So sometimes the disengagement happens because of something that didn't have an intention behind it. It just sort of started happening because of lack of communication. And so I want you to know that where this all comes from is sometimes an innocent place. It's not like people know or do it intentionally. They may just act the way that they do because they think that's the right way, but it's got this effect. You can change it by making your managers aware and then ensuring that there's constant communication downwards. So it all looks red and yellow here, and it looks like there was bad intent behind it. No, it's often it just sort of happens without you even realizing it. So please take note of this stats. It's true. All right, and then I want to go to the. Okay, here's some more research results. So research shows that a committed and engaged workforce has a direct impact on an organization's bottom line. So the latest findings indicate that on average, less than 30% of all employees globally are engaged. This means that for every 1 million rand spent on remuneration, roughly 700,000 is unproductively employed or wasted. So there's such a lot of cost that we can't even calculate, because how do you calculate the effect of negativity on other people that is engaged and fully engaged? We can't even put a number on that. So the things that we can't measure is probably your worst enemy because you don't know what it is. But this means for every 1 million rand spent on remuneration, like on a salary, roughly 700,000 is unproductive. Employed or wasted. That's quite a lot of money. You don't have to struggle like this or pay and not get anything for it. You don't have to do that. So figures like these seem to explain why management nowadays like to refer to the employees as a strategic resource or a competitive advantage. However, to capitalize on your employees as a strategic resource, you have to know what drives them and motivates them. So in essence, where to start and where to focus if you want to enable them to perform at optimum levels. So you need to know in your organization, in your culture and in your environment, what type of person do you have in your environment? What type of, what makes them tick? How are they? Are they very ambitious? Or are they very passionate? You need to know what is behind the person in your environment. So you can't just apply any model to it and think your engagement will go up. You need to know firstly, who are you and who are your people? What do they want? And what will make them engaged? And they will tell you. When you do a survey, they're going to tell you. You don't have to give the answer. If you ask the questions in this domain, they're going to tell you what it is that they want to know, what's bothering them, what can be done better. All right, so there's some more facts about employee engagement that you really need to know. So firstly, engagement has a positive impact on business outcomes. So employee engagement, which is an individual employee's reaction to your work culture, is more of a challenge than ever. So hundreds of studies have shown that highly engaged employees are more productive, they deliver better customer service, they are more innovative and are more likely to stay at your organization. And in today's dynamic, always on world of work, how do we keep engagement high? So there's really a lot of stats showing that employee engagement does make a very big difference. We all know how it is to work with a negative person or people that's starting to get negative. We all know, I'm sure that if you have been in the world of work for quite a while, we know how that feels, the environment that creates. Let's look at fact number 2. All of the companies surveyed, 82% measure engagement at least once per year. So when asked how frequently do you measure your employees' engagement, we found progress, but still plenty of work that needs to be done. So 64% of companies measure engagement once a year. 11% once per quarter, and 7% more frequently than once per quarter. But 18% never measure engagement at all. So the market still have a long way to go. One of the biggest problems of people doing the engagement services is they do nothing about it. So not a lot of companies do the surveys. When they do the survey, they do nothing about it. So fact number 3, despite major spending, about $74 billion in the US alone on engagement products and services, companies still don't seem to get engagement right. So there's a lot of effort, but people don't get it right. It just doesn't happen. So why not? So though companies and leaders worldwide recognize the advantages of engaging employees, and many have instituted surveys to measure engagement, employee engagement has barely budgeted in well over a decade. So it still doesn't really, it doesn't make a difference, but it's because people are not measuring the right constructs like we've covered now. And so they don't know what they don't know. You can't manage them if you don't measure it. If you don't know what it is, you can't manage it. And secondly, if you don't do anything about your answer that you got, it's useless. It's a useless exercise. And then I found this very, very, very interesting. And I don't want to throw the managers under the bus. A lot of the times managers just don't know because they haven't been informed of what it is that they need to convey. But managers account for 70% of variance in employee engagement. So Gallup's research puts most of the blame on managers. We agree. Our survey data shows a 78% correlation between managers' relationships with their teams and their team's engagement levels. So the manager that you appoint is critically important. So firstly, we've covered in previous webinars the psychometric assessment that will show you on what level should your manager be. Is he on the right cognitive level? And behaviorally, what does his profile look like? And then, what is his behavioral style? So that style will inevitably create the culture that you have, the way that people are communicated with and to, about what and how regularly. So you can't just communicate. You need to know what are you communicating about. So know that, and I don't want to throw the managers under the bus here. Sometimes they do it unintentionally. They don't know what they're supposed to communicate because you as the senior management need to engage all the managers and they need to convey that message down. They can't just all just know. They need to be on board to know what it is that they're supposed to convey. All right, and then fact number 5, I think this is the last one. So can you see that HR has changed? Firstly, here in the 90s, we had automated systems. Then we went into 2004, 2012, we integrated our talent management systems. Then we engaged, we did cultural and analytical fit. And now, today, we look at empowerment. So it's changed from being automated to integration to engaging a little bit more, but now we empower. So if you empower leaders, your leaders can empower your people. So the technology challenge going forward is to empower leaders at all levels to drive team engagement in organization of the future. Everyone needs to be on board. They don't know what they don't know. If they don't know what it is that what are we driving down? This is what happened at Africa Tikkun. Once everyone was on board, it was easy to drive the message down. People actually wanted to drive it down because it happened. It happened incredibly easily. It started flowing. People got on board. They just didn't know. So inform. Firstly, you want to know what to inform about, and then they can actually do it. So firstly, I want to look at, I'm getting to the end of my presentation, and I want to share with you what you should look out for. So firstly, you can't manage what you can't measure. It's like anything else. Don't spitball. Don't shoot in the dark. Know what it is that you're doing. Do it the first time right. If you need to use a scientifically reliable measurement instrument to tell you what it is that you should do, and then you do it. Don't just leave it there. So a good starting point will be to assess your organization's performance and engagement levels. Most managers are good at measuring their bottom lines, the financial results, but have no idea to determine or measure what drives those results. So when you choose an instrument, choose a diagnostic instrument. Choose a statistically validated instrument. When possible, choose an instrument that has an interactive dashboard that's convenient. So there's loads of surveys available. This, you can just Google it. Everything pops up. Firstly, you really want to get something that's diagnostic, that will use well-researched information and zoom in on that. So when we said earlier that we want to measure managers' intent, you want to take that construct and then dive deeper into it. So you're not just going to ask superficial questions. You're going to dive deep and analyze what does that mean for people. Then only can you change it. So there are very few instruments that's statistically validated. We use the flow at work that is statistically validated through the University of South Africa. Most instruments that you can buy are surveys, probably paper and pencil based. You want something that's an interactive dashboard that's online, where you have live data in front of you. A link gets sent to the employee. And even if it's employees that doesn't have access to computers, you want to be able to facilitate sessions where you capture the data in a group session, totally anonymously, and you get your information that way. But once all the data is on your dashboard, you can play around with data. You can do comparisons. You can evaluate gender versus how long a person has been in the company, whatever. You can play around with it. But you want something that's interactive. Ensure that it is anonymous, it's convenient, and firstly that you also get a personal engagement before you start. People get tired of filling in things, completing it, and nothing ever happens with it. So that's why you want to use something that's the same, something that you can possibly repeat. So you don't want to use different types of surveys and see which one works the best. You want to actually build on one. You want to use the same one this year, maybe in a year or two's time. You want to use the same instrument, measure against the same results. So don't make a lot of work for yourself. If you're going to pay for something, you can just as well pay for something properly the first time around that's going to give you statistically accurate results. And then what you should avoid, and I've mentioned this before, there's actually only one thing that I want you to really take note of. Doing a survey and then not doing something about it, it can be worse than not doing any service at all. If you already have semi-engaged to disengaged people, that's just going to add to the negativity. So the only way to ensure sustainable and long-term performance improvements is to institute appropriate interventions and feedback sessions, and then to refine and adjust those on an ongoing basis in response to regular surveys. So that is the worst thing that you can do, is do a survey and not do something about it. You want to have an active plan, and you want to take your top priorities and address those. And usually, if you use a very good instrument, it's not going to be difficult for you to figure out what you need to change. And that change lies within your managers to start communicating and then knowing what to communicate about. This is so simple, but your baseline that you start off with needs to be a good instrument. Don't waste your own time by something cheap or something that is not statistically relevant or well researched. You're going to get some answers, but you want the best. You don't want something that's sort of good. All right. I just quickly wanted to touch on, let me just see the time. So we've got another 10 minutes, then I'm gonna get to your questions in the next 5 minutes. But I wanted to touch quickly on what's going on in the workplace currently with COVID. So indicators of organizational well-being, always in general, is a continued sense of connection to the purpose of the organization, feeling supported while adapting to new working conditions, coping with new challenges in a way of working, and receiving adequate and open communication from one's employer. Now your communication in this time that we're in is going to be even more critical, because people are sort of feeling isolated. It's very different way of working now. Communication. That's all you need to do. All right. And lastly, this is what we found recently, the 10 top things currently for people in this COVID time that's very important to them. So firstly, having flexibility to care for loved ones. This is particularly in the time that we are in at the moment. So having the flexibility to care for loved ones, being able to focus on one's work. So creating a workplace, whether it's at work or at home, that still allows them to focus, to be able to do what it is that I need to do. Having a manager that keeps up to date to what's going on in the organization, so checking in with them regularly. Being clear on both what is expected of you and your team during the pandemic. And then feeling supported by your manager in general, believing that co-workers and colleagues are supporting each other. So that team cohesion, once again, you just establish it by more and more communication. Confidence that you can reach out to your manager or team to help if you're feeling overwhelmed. And that overwhelming is going to pop up a lot because we do psychometric testing on a daily basis. And for the last, I think it's 3 months, the stress levels on all our psychometric profiles are sky high. Pessimism is sky high. Anxiety and stress is sky high. Expect that people may be experiencing that. Whether they're showing it or not is a different story. Even if you see funny behavior coming out that you haven't seen before, it can be because of the stress that they're under. They're adapting to change. That's one of most people's the most difficult thing is adapting to change. Most people like to know what's going to happen and it must be predictable. Now it's crazy, so please be aware of this last point. People may be feeling overwhelmed. They may show it, they may not. Trusting in your team to have your best interest at heart. Once again, all of these things can be achieved through communication. So, all right, I want to look at your questions quickly. All right, can an employee be disengaged although doing extremely well in their role? Possibly yes, because people will act differently. How long the person can keep it up is a different story, because why they are disengaged is something that you don't know. So whether it's things that's happening in the company and which things are happening in the company, they could be holding their breath and be performing very well up to a point. I would say at some point either depression will set in, or you're gonna start seeing the symptoms. So you may not see it right away, but it can manifest in different ways. So they can possibly keep it up for a while. All right, and then there's another question here. In order to be informed regarding employee engagement, what is a global benchmark on the number of times in which an employer can conduct engagement surveys on average? I wasn't clear with fact number 2. Okay, so yes, I know what it is that you're talking about. You want to avoid survey fatigue under your employees, because people do get sick and tired of the link that's being sent to measure how they're feeling, especially if they don't get feedback on it. We would recommend, if you've never done it before, maybe do it twice a year, where you want to measure what you've got now, and at the end of the year, you want to measure what it looks like again. In my personal opinion, I would say maybe once a year. I wouldn't tire people out. That is if I'm happy with what's going on. But twice a year can get a little bit hectic, although I do think it's recommended. I do think you have to keep an eye on not irritating people and making them frustrated with all the surveys that's coming in. People will also just get irritated with it if they never ever see any form of feedback. You do want to show them some type of result. Then you can do it maybe up to twice a year. But I would start off with, if I've never done it before, or if I've done other types of surveys, I would do one that's interactive, one that can be continued, like an online one that can be continued after a period of time. And you can build on that one. So I would do it today and measure within a week, a year again, within a week again. And then I would maybe within another year. But I would keep an eye on my symptoms. If I have high turnover problems, any type of employee problems, I would shorten the period. But you need to do something in the meantime. You can't do a survey. You can't just dipstick constantly and not do anything about it. You have to actively implement some changes before you do a dipstick again. Don't just do a dipstick again, because nothing would have changed. You're going to get exactly the same result as you had in January when you measure again in December, if you have not implemented any forms of changes. So actively work together with someone who knows how to make changes, and maybe even get like an industrial psychologist from the outside to tell you what it is that you need to do. What is your timeline? What result is it that you want to see? So if you need people from the outside to communicate with your employees, do that, but create change. Otherwise, it's useless to do a dipstick again, wasting your time and your own money. Is there any other questions that anyone had with regards to employee engagement, or anything that's not clear? If you want more information on employee engagement instruments, please contact us. I will put you on the right track with what it is that you can get, because if you Google it, you're going to get loads of it. You want the best, maybe in the South African context, something that's very well researched, validated. The one that we use has been validated through the University of South Africa. It's got a nice interactive online portal where you can use the statistically reliable questions, but you can add your open-ended questions that's applicable to your own organization. So you can change a little bit. With this system that I'm talking about, you can even do little dipsticks as you are implementing your changes, implementing the things that you wanted to do. You can do little dipsticks to see. Your employees can actually tell you whether are the managers doing it? Are they communicating like they said they're going to? So that will help you a lot. Is there another question? Yeah, there's another question. Any ideas on how to start doing the survey? Does one need to personally interview each employee? What you would ideally like to do depends on the size of your company. If it's a medium to a very big company, I would send out communication about what it is that we want to do, because you want to create buy-in. Remember, statistically, not everyone is going to participate. There's going to be a small percentage that's going to say, I'm not interested. So you want to create buy-in, and you want to warm them up, and you want to engage. If you can physically talk to them, that will be great. If the company is too big, send out communications. Make them excited that something is going to happen. Promise them feedback and then give them feedback. Then you can do it online. I would suggest for convenience the online way. If you're a very small company and you want to do a manual survey, like a paper pencil one, communicating with people individually can be a good idea if you're very small. Otherwise, you can have little group sessions just telling people that that's what you're going to look at. But for convenience, I like the online approach. And then if you have groups of people that doesn't have access to a computer, I would do little facilitative sessions of maybe 20 people in a room where you actually ask a question and capture it for them. But that is more with the interactive system that you can do that. And then how do you know what questions to ask? This is why I want to go back to this slide. These constructs that I have, this one. I want you to have a look at these constructs. These are the topics that you want to address. You don't make up your own. You want to have structured questions based on this research, because it is very well researched. And you can add your own open-ended questions to your survey at the end of the day, but you want to make sure that you add these questions that we've addressed here. Oh, sorry, I jumped. Where am I now? So don't make up your own, work on these topics. So the survey that we use already have these questions in it. It's standardized. That's why it's statistically validated. So please do not just ask random things. A lot of clients wants to make up their own. I would use the statistically validated questions and then add some additional questions relating to my own company. All right, and then is it beneficial to conduct employee engagement surveys with new joiners, since they may still be settling into their roles and the organization? After how long since joining the organization should an employee be asked to participate in the survey to get reliable feedback? That's a good question, because if someone has just been there for a week, it's going to be unreliable. I would give them at least 3 months. Yes, because they could skew your result, because obviously if they joined your company, they should still be happy and fresh. I would then do a dipstick. I start off with employees that I have already. When you do a dipstick later, say 6 months to a year later, then you include your new employees, because then they would have valuable information to add. I hope that answers that question. All right, and then is it ideal to have someone external to conduct the survey and analyze the results, or does it not matter? It's ideal. it may not be practical, but it is ideal. So you can do it yourself, but you know what? I found that even if you do your own survey, there is always a form of bias. If you hear something that you don't like, you may feel, but I didn't know that you had a problem with that. So who could it have been? And sometimes I've seen in the past, people try to figure out who in that department said that, because we can break it up in departments. You can have your survey for the whole organization, departmental level, not individual, because then it compromises the confidentiality. But I have found in the past that when, not intentionally, but it's a bias is something that comes out inevitably. So it will be ideal to use an external person because they are totally objective and they're totally unbiased. So ideal, maybe not practical, but ideal. And then another question here, how do you manage engaging staff and staff that use the opportunity to moan and groan, the disengaged sector of the workforce? The focus is often shifted from the intention of engagement to disengagement. So the question is, how do you manage engaging staff and staff that use the opportunity to moan and groan? The focus is often shifted from the intention of engagement to disengagement. How do you manage? I'm not sure if I understand your question exactly. How do you manage engaging staff and staff that use opportunity? Okay, so what you mean is you want to look at how engaged they are, but you are scared people are going to use the opportunity to moan and groan. If you use a proper instrument, it's going to ask objective questions. So those people that moan and groan are forced to actually ask a question that's really relevant in the workplace. So they're not going to give you their personal opinion about how crappy the manager is and that very personal feelings. They're going to actually be forced to ask a good question around structured aspects. This is why you don't just want to make up your own questions, because the moaners and groaners they're going to spill it out, and that's what you don't want. You're going to get a negative report that you don't know what to do with. So you want a structured report where you're forcing the moan and groaners to participate actually properly. On the open-ended questions, maybe the ones that you've structured, that you've added in there because you want to know a little bit more about your company, maybe there they'll moan and groan a little, but you're still going to get the proper answers on the proper questions. I know exactly what it is that you're talking about, because that's why a lot of people don't like employee engagement surveys, but it's because they don't use a proper one. It's because they maybe use a fairly cheapish one that just asks sort of random questions around how happy are you with your pay. You're going to hear it from the moaners and groaners. You want to hear very well structured questions around that topic. And so that's how you'll get around it. So the focus is often shifted from the intention of engagement to disengagement. So I hope that I answer your question on that, because I think I know what you mean. Once again, you want to start off with a proper instrument. You don't want to just set up your own questions. If you do that, then you may get people who just lets loose and who's not constructively contributing, because that's what you want, right? You want people to constructively participate. You want those disengaged people to actually tell you what it is that you can do to make them more engaged. Sometimes you will have people that are just not, you can't change them. They're just a saboteur by heart. They just, you can't change them. They may leave if you implement changes that actually uplifts other people. I've actually seen people leave because the environment is not conducive for them to strive in it anymore. They actually go. But that's if you implement your changes properly and effectively, and you stick to it, and you get your managers to buy in and roll it down and roll it out. All right, let me know if there's any other questions, and if I've answered it correctly. If you want any more clarification, please let me know. All right, so if you want more information on this, please let HR Talk know, and we will forward you this presentation so that you have some information that you can refer to. Please let me know if you want information on the survey that we used, because I can give you all the information that you need to give it a test run if you need to. as industrial psychologists, we only make use of statistically reliable instruments. We don't play around with general surveys and things that's going to sort of give you an indication. We're not interested in that. We do it properly and thoroughly the first time around. All right, if there's no other questions, then we are going to say goodbye for now. Keep an eye on the next webinars that HR Talk is hosting. So just keep in touch. All right, thank you, everyone.